Hi, today I'm going to show you how to do a pretty simple, bright red, delicious apple. And I think that you will enjoy it. I hope you will. And what I'm going to do is start with a bit of an underpainting. And by that I mean I'm going to put on some colors, let them dry, and then put on the final red. And I think that it'll be easy for you, and hopefully you will find lots of uses for it. And I'm going to take yellow that is kind of on the warm side. You could use permanent yellow light, or you could use a deep yellow. And what I'm going to do is place a little bit of that into the center of the apple, and I'm going to go around an area where I think I would like a highlight and leave that just be white paper, and then curve it a little bit so that it's not just a straight line. Then I'm going to take my brush that has 50% of the water removed, and I'm going to come around and touch into the outer edge of that yellow and soften it a little bit so it's not a hard line. And just stretch that color out a little. I'm stretching it out all the way to the outside edge, so my apple has a cast of yellow, but the bulk of the yellow is right in there. And then I'm going to put a little bit more yellow up here inside the area where the stem would come out. And then I will soften the outer edge of that a little bit, just so there's no hard line there. Then I'm going to pick up a dark color. Now I'm going to use red violet. If you don't have red violet, you could mix permanent rose and Antwerp blue, or even ultramarine blue. Just make a burgundy mix, and I'm going to mix it so that it's fairly dry. And then I'm going to come in here right up under the leaf, and I'm going to start to paint in what would be my dark area on the apple. And I will soften the edge of that as well. And I'm also going to go right up along this top edge, right about there. Then I want to soften the edges of that in, and I can use either my round brush with a little water on it, or my flat brush, whatever is easier for you to work with. On the outside, the round brush seems to work really well and fit in the space nicely. And then on the inside, I think my flat brush will work better. So that's up to you. I just want to lose that edge so it doesn't create a hard line for me. Okay. Now, at this point, I will get this dry with the hair dryer, and then I'll come back and put on a very strong, bright red. Now, the one thing you could do is you could start layering with alizarin crimson over this. And alizarin crimson makes a nice, dark, rich red, but it's very transparent, so you have to do 3 or 4 layers with it, at least 3. But the easiest way I found to do this, if you have this, it's Dr. P.H. Martin's Hydrous watercolor. It's very intense, very strong red, and this is called Deep Red Rose. Another color that you could use on this would be Mission's Permanent Rose, because it's quite a bit on the red side, and then end up with an alizarin crimson layer at the end. But this is the ultimate easy way to do this, is to use the Hydrous Deep Red Rose. So I will dry it and then come back. My apple has dried, and I'm going to begin to put on my deep red rose. And as I said, if you don't have it, you have alternative colors that you can use. I discovered this Dr. P.H. Martin's Hydrus watercolor a while back, and it is just so strong and so intense that I have found a lot of uses for it in my watercolor life. Okay, I'm putting a little red at the back edge to the left of the stem, and then I'm going to take a little bit of water and just pull the red down over the yellow in that direction. It kind of leaves the yellow show through a little bit, and if nothing else, it creates a warmer area in the red. Okay, now I'm going to go on the other side of the stem and repeat that. I have several paintings with these red delicious apples on them, and I've done them several ways and found that this is the easiest. So I hope you enjoy it, and if you had the whole set of Hydrus watercolors, you could use those as well. I wanted to make it so if you just needed to purchase one bottle and like this idea, that it would not be as expensive as to go and buy the whole set. Okay, so that's allowing a little bit of that yellow to show through there. And now I'm going to take my larger brush, and basically I'm going to put the red over the entire apple. And since this is still not quite dry, I will start at the outer edge and go down this way. Keeping my outside edge nice and straight. And I'm just going to cover all of the color with this. If you have to turn your piece around to get the bottom nice, do so. I'm going to try not to turn it this time. Okay, I'm going to go over this top line here, and I'm still going to stay outside of the area that I left white as much as possible. You can begin to see, you should begin to see your dark showing through as a darker value. I'm going to come in close there and around that white area. And watch your outside edge. The red is so strong, it's easier to put it on right and straight than to clean it up. Okay, so at this point, what I'm going to do, I've got it covered. I'm going to take a little bit of, just have my brush turned into a thirsty brush, and I'm just going to lighten a little bit through the center by lifting a little bit of that pigment off, just enough so that I can see there is a little warmer glow through the center because of the yellow that went on there. Then I'm going to take my round brush, or I'm sorry, my flat brush, and come in and just touch into the edge of this, just to pull the red in a little bit, again to soften that edge. Okay, now if there's any spots that I think look like they're missing some red, it's still wet enough where I can come back and I can put a little more red on. And I have one more step to do after this, so I'm going to get this dry, and then I will show you the final steps. But you can see it's a real bright, vivid red color. I'm pulling this up in hopes of creating a few streaks, and I don't know if you can see that or not, but it did create a few. And let's see what happens once it's dried, okay? Okay, now it's dry, and I'm seeing that my dark looks like it's coming down here, and it doesn't look like it's coming across the bottom. So, any place you need to correct or make a little darker underneath, now you can take a little red violet with a small brush and go over the top of it. So we use the underpainting to turn this side back, and I wanted it to kind of come over to turn this bottom part so that it goes under a little bit too. So I've put the red violet on top, and now I'm just taking a thirsty brush and just going in and softening the edges of that color. And that's working very nicely. So if your outside edge, or if this top area didn't get dark enough, you can do that. I can see here that it seemed like my top area created a bit of an outline, and the dark didn't come down very far. So I'm just going to put a little more red violet up there. So you can play back and forth with it as needed. And the reason I'm putting the red violet up here is to make it recede a little bit. And you can do that anywhere where you need to strengthen your dark area. Now, if I had used a mix with blue in it, it might have covered a little bit better, but I thought the red violet would be a little better choice, because then I know that I can use that on top too if I want to change anything. Okay, because the red violet creates a nice dark on top of your deep red rose. Okay, now I've got a little bit of a stem here, which I'll deal with in a minute. But the first thing I want to do is I want to scrub out the highlight a little more. And the first way I'll scrub that out is to take a short brush and just go in here and soften at the edge of it a little bit. And then I'll use the stiff scrubber. This is the soft scrubber, or short scrubber. And I'll scrub the edge of it a little, and then I'll come back and get a nice strong highlight out of this. But I wanted to work some of the color into the edge of that highlight area. So the other thing I could have done, there's always a couple of ways, but I could have also painted over that white and then come in and lift it with my soft scrubber, jiggle the paint, lift it out, and then lift the brightest area out, which is what I'm going to do right now with the highlight and the stiff scrubber. And another way to get that highlight strong is to pick it out with an X-Acto blade. And sometimes I do that right in the very center of it. But I need to let it dry before I do that. So I'm going to let it dry right now. And then I'm going to paint the little stem. Now the little stem is just brown, and I don't have brown on my palette. Normally what I do is I mix burnt sienna and ultramarine blue and get a nice strong brown that way. Or I could use red, brown, and ultramarine blue. That works too. Either one. Okay, so here I just want to paint that little stem area. make it narrower at the bottom than it is at the top. And then see the little cut end at the top? I basically just outlined it. And now I'm going to take a little round brush, put some water on those inner edges, and just kind of work the color in toward the center. And the only reason for doing that is it creates a lighter value. So you've got a dark value on the stem, and then you've got the light value up on the top. And we've got a little leaf here. If you would like to deal with that, I'll use, I think we'll put a little bit of yellow on it, the same yellow we used in the apple, and just have a little bit of that yellow show right up here. And then I will paint the leaf with green mix or with shadow green, which is my favorite straight out of the tube mix. But you can make it with any blue and green, and then tone it down with a little bit of red, and it gives you a nice dull grade green. So I'm just leaving a little bit of light on the back side of this leaf, and then I'll put water on that, scoot it around, and it just kind of creates value changes. And I'm also going to pull the stem in, and then sometimes I just blot it like that, and that gives you another value change. Okay, now my yellow side will kind of glow through just like the yellow in the center here. So we'll just take a little bit of the shadow green. And on this side, I'll pull a nice little point out here. Put it along the outside edge, in here, and then put some water right over the yellow. And it's really better if you let one side dry up before you do the other side. It works better for you that way. Okay, that's fine. And then you can always lift that center. My green bled across because it's so wet. But we'll wait till it dries a little bit, and then I'll lift some vein out of that center area. Okay, I have a little small brush, and I'm going to try and lift that vein or clean up that area a little bit. That because I painted it while both sides were wet, it ran together. So I'll just clean it up a little like that. And there is a stem that needs to look like it's going back in here. And I need to make my leaf come back a little further so my stem can come out right there and look like it's going into that apple. So I'll complete that. Those are details. The whole point of this was to get the apple painted. But you know what they say about the devil being in the details. Sometimes that's true. Okay. There we got it. All right, now the other thing I want to do is show you how to lift a really strong highlight out of here, because by the time you get it blended and softened, it changes a little. But if I take an X-Acto blade and I pick at the top layer of the color that's on there, I'm not sure if you can see, but it does create a little more brightness to the apple. This apple will be used in my online classes at louisejacksonpaintingclasses.com. So please join me for that and enjoy your apple.